Well, hello everyone. 2 videos a day seems about right. I might do 3 today. I might have 2 more in me. We'll see. I'm going to do this one quick, and then we'll go to the next one, and we'll see. So, I read this just before dinner, and I thought, man, like this is exactly the message I want to be hearing. Canada has been hijacked. We've got 2 political parties that are supposed to be holding each other accountable and making sure that the best ideas are brought to bear. And one is saying it's Donald Trump's fault that we couldn't get our trade deal done. And the other is saying, yeah, it's Donald Trump's fault that we couldn't get the trade deal done. So that's weird. Mr. Scheer coming out, and I understand that you need to put up a united front for trade negotiations, and you can't be criticizing Trudeau in the press or anything to that effect. But the fact that, what happened with the dairy farmers of Canada at the convention and the fallout from that, I don't think Mr. Scheer's dealt with appropriately. And Justin Trudeau's completely failed negotiations on NAFTA are 2 reasons why I'm very glad Mr. Bernier is fighting this fight, or at least bringing this fight to the forefront. So, this is a post from the National Post. Link is in the description. I'm going to read all of it, and we're going to jump over to a quick YouTube video that is cogent to this article, and I think it helps understand it. It helped me understand it, so I'm going to do it for you because it's worth it. Okay. Maxime Bernier, why my new political movement? Because Canada has been hijacked. I recognize this is a risky enterprise, but the payoff for Canadians could be huge. I agree. Okay. Quote, since I left my Conservative colleagues and announced I would be creating a new party last week, I've been accused of being a sore loser and only interested in my ego, of being excessively obsessed with the issue of supply management, and of splitting the Conservative vote, guaranteeing Justin Trudeau's re-election. To understand my real motives, my critics should read up on public choice theory. Okay, so this is where I'm going to take a quick break, and we're going to watch a quick video about public choice theory. It's worth it, so watch.
Economics gives us insight as to how humans behave when our unlimited desires collide with our limited abilities. These insights enable us to predict how car buyers will alter their behavior when gas prices rise, how students will alter their behavior when the government subsidizes college loans, and how cigarette manufacturers will alter their behavior when the government regulates vaping.
Public choice is a field of economics that takes what we understand about human behavior and applies that knowledge to humans who behave in the public sector: politicians, bureaucrats, lobbyists, and voters. But because the humans who occupy the public sector are not different from those who occupy the private sector, we can use economic principles to predict how these humans will behave.
For example, voters have less incentive to engage in the voting process when the benefits of getting their way in the voting booth are small, but the cost of casting a vote is large. This can lead to people voting for policies that are bad for society.
Suppose 100 people are asked to vote on a proposed law. The law says that the government will tax 90 of these people $10 each, burn half of what's collected, and give what's left to the remaining 10 people. If we allow these people to vote on the law, what will be the outcome? The 90 who would be taxed don't like the law and will vote against it. The 10, however, stand to gain $45 each. They like the law and will vote for it. The proposal will be defeated by a vote of 90 to 10.
But now, suppose that it is costly to vote. It is costly just to stay aware of the laws that the government is proposing. It is costly to read the laws. It is costly to understand how the laws will affect you. And it is costly to physically get up, go to a polling station, vote, and come back home. In our thought experiment, we can simulate this voting cost by charging each person $15 to vote. It doesn't matter how you vote, yes or no, but to vote at all, you have to pay $15. Who will want to vote? The 10 people will definitely want to vote. If this law is passed, each will gain $45. That more than covers the $15 cost to vote. What about the 90? They won't vote. The law is clearly bad for them, but the cost of living with the bad law is less than the cost of voting against the law. So the 90 will all stay home. The law will pass by a vote of 10 to 0, and society will be worse off.
This is called the principle of concentrated benefits and dispersed costs. The law represents a cost to society. One group of people will pay $900 in taxes. The law also represents a benefit to society. Another group of people will receive $450. The cost to society is greater than the benefit to society, and so society would be better off if the law were defeated. But it isn't defeated. Why? Because the $450 benefit is shared by a small group of people, so each person in the small group has a strong incentive to vote for the law. But the $900 cost is spread over a large number of people. so each person in the large group has a lesser incentive to vote against the law.
So an example would be anybody who is receiving social benefits, social assistance, social services, even if it's mathematically proven that that's a bad law, they are incentivized to vote for the people proving or promising to continue that law. Do you see how they correlate?
And if the incentive to vote against the law is less than the cost of voting against the law, those against the law won't bother to vote.
The principle of concentrated benefits and dispersed costs can create a strong incentive for people to vote for laws that actually are bad for society. This is just one example of how public choice economics can help us to understand better the behavior of people in the public sector. In the same way.
Okay, so I'm going to leave it there because I think that's a good example of what Bernier is talking about. And he explains it a little bit in the article, but only because you understand it now will you understand what the article is talking about, I think. Well, maybe not, I don't know. Okay, so to understand my real motives, my critics should read up on public choice theory. You guys just did. You're welcome. Developed by James Buchanan, who won a Nobel Prize for Economics in 1986, explains how interest groups hijack political debates and capture politicians, winning huge benefits in the form of subsidies, trade, protection, fiscal or legal privileges, and other favorable regulations. They're willing to devote enormous lobbying effort and large amounts of money to get them. Of course, ordinary taxpayers ultimately have to pay for these benefits, but a favor worth millions, even billions of dollars to an interest group may cost only a few dollars to each individual taxpayer. Why would anyone make the effort to understand, let alone oppose, complex government policy? It's just not worth it. As public choice theory explains, rational ignorance is much better default mode. This dynamic of concentrated benefit versus dispersed cost explains why we have so many bad policies that are obviously not in the public interest, why it is so difficult to reform such policies, and why government keeps growing. The number of groups a politician can pander to in order to buy votes is endless. When I became an industry minister in 2006, I was squarely confronted with this dilemma. The Conservative Party was then totally reconciled to corporate subsidies. Opposing them in the 2004 election had made it difficult to compete with Paul Martin, who was promising government money to various industries. There was no point in arguing. I concentrated on other files where I could have an impact, like telecom deregulation. And whenever there was a big corporate welfare announcement to make, I asked one of my colleagues to do it for me. They thought I was doing them a favor. The reverse was true. Expressing my doubts publicly did not go down well. Some may remember that in 2010, I publicly broke ranks with my colleagues from Quebec City, with my colleagues from the Quebec City arena who were pushing our government to subsidize a new sports amphitheater in the city. They had seized on this popular project to, what else, buy votes. They were furious at me. I could mention the Bombardier bailout and many other similar cases. Of course, the mother of all political hijackings is the ridiculous influence the small supply management lobby for dairy, poultry, and eggs has managed to exert over every political party and every politician in Canada. Should we be surprised that it is 25 lobbyists at the Conservative Convention in Halifax last weekend? Beyond the importance of this issue at the NAFTA negotiations, the reason I have focused on supply management so much is that it is a litmus test. If you let yourself be manipulated by such a small cartel, how will you be able to resist other interest groups and make the right decisions for all Canadians? Simply, you won't. That is what I've been concerned with for the past 12 years, how to reconcile my desire to serve the public with a political dynamic entirely dominated by pandering and vote-buying strategies. Conservatives play that game as much as the Liberals, even though it directly contradicts the small government, free market principles the party purports to defend. As I said when I resigned, I have come to the conclusion that the Conservatives Party cannot be reformed, and that if I want to do politics differently, I need to do it elsewhere. How do I plan to do this? By systemically reversing the dynamic described by public choice theory. That is, by taking positions based on principles I believe in, and that accord with what I think is the public interest, and by resisting pressure from interest groups seeking favors despite short-term political cost. I recognize this is a risky enterprise. It certainly explains why none of my caucus colleagues were interested in joining me, but the payoff for Canadians could be huge. And what gives me hope is that with the internet, it is now much easier and less costly to find relevant information and mobilize around an issue. A small group of motivated citizens can potentially have as much influence as a lobby group spending millions of dollars. I know many Canadians are fed up with the traditional way of doing politics. We'll see if enough of them are ready to follow me. So we will. A couple of things I wanted to highlight. the litmus test. So, quote, the reason I've focused on supply management so much is that it's a litmus test. If you let yourself be manipulated by a small cartel, how will you be able to resist other interest groups? Yeah, and we've seen our government sell out to the point of everybody is marginalized and everybody is requiring laws to be included. We have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I mean, it's, yeah. So the litmus test for pandering, the litmus test for can you be bought, it's right there. It's in our faces. And the answer is our current government is bought. It's bought by the dairy cartels and who knows who else. And I want a government that's not bought. I want a government that's looking out for Canadians. I want a government that is run by Canadians for Canadians. That's what I want. And I think that's what Max represents. So, MaximeBernier.com to donate. Thanks for watching.